Hey everybody, welcome to Country Girl with Kathy Jarvis. And it's cold outside, and that's a perfect time to be thinking about starting a garden for next spring. Now, if you're new to this and just thinking about starting, there's a few things that I'd like to share with you that I wish I had known before I ever started gardening. And the first one is to start small. My parents had a huge, big garden. And when I got married, I thought, well, I'll make a big garden. I had kids. We needed food. So I'll make a big garden. Did not last very long. Working with the kids and husband working full-time away from the house, taking care of the house. We were building the house at the time. I just was not able to keep up with the garden. So I actually gave up for a while. And when the kids got a little bit older, I started a small garden with just 4 little raised beds, and that worked out really well. Except for one problem: location. I did not take in consideration the sun and how much light it got during the day, and the trees that were around the area that I planted. Well, it turned out fine for a while, but the trees got bigger and bigger and bigger, and to the point where it became what I classify now as a shade garden. And the only thing that'll grow in there are herbs and some shady flowers, that like to have the shade. You can't grow anything that requires a faux sun or even partial sun because it's pretty shady back there. So you have to look at your location. Find a place that gets a good amount of sunlight during the summertime especially. And then another thing, I should have been better at planning. I put in the beds one at a time without any plan whatsoever. I stuck a small greenhouse out there. Yeah, that was fine. And I kept adding beds, and there's no really rhyme or reason to it. I plant a tree here, plant a tree there, away from so it wouldn't shade the garden. But I had no really plan. And as I began to make bigger beds and more beds and decide I wanted a greenhouse, it was like, where do I put the other greenhouse? And now I'm expanding to another greenhouse, and I have to move the little greenhouse and relocate it because of the only place I have I can put a big greenhouse is in half of that little greenhouse location. So you have to kind of plan ahead of time. A garden's forever changing, but your basic structures, if you have raised beds, they're in there. You have pathways. If you've done anything but grass pathways, they're in there. You have a place for your garden tools, so you have a garden shed. It's there. And some of these things are easy to move if you decide to change things around, and some of them are harder to move. Like the little greenhouse that I'm going to have to remove, it's going to be a fairly easy one to move because it wasn't put into the ground with concrete or anything like that. It's just anchored in. So I'll be able to move that. But my other greenhouse is anchored in with with cement around the post. It could be moved. They're just, it's just cement posts like you would put a fence post in. But it would mean a lot of trouble. And the same thing with the garden shed. It's got posts that's on, but they can be moved. So it's not really a permanent structure, but it would take a lot to move it. So plan out how you want your garden. The main hardware, the hard structures, make sure you know where you want those at. Plan those out early. And then you get to decide how you want to garden. There are so many different ways. You can garden in the ground, you can garden in raised beds, you can garden in buckets, and you can garden in flower pots and containers and grow bags. So you have to make a decision now so you can get the equipment ready that you need. And another thing to do is to grow only what you really like to eat, especially at the beginning when you're first starting, and to research what you're planting. I like oranges, but I can't grow oranges here. So it would do me no good to buy an orange tree and stick it out there in the freezing weather right now and expect it to live. So do your research and plant crops that you know will do good in your area. And if you're not for sure, talk to your neighbors that do garden, talk to the county extension agent. They'll give you an idea of what you can grow in this area nicely. And just don't go overboard the first year. Invest in good soil. Now this is a good one. My first garden, which I did the 4 beds in the back, the shade garden, it has really poor soil. I didn't think about soil at the time. I just thought I want a garden. We had just dug out the basement for this part of the house, and I used that soil in the beds. It wasn't topsoil, it was deep soil. And that's another reason why things have not grown well. So your soil is one of the most important things. So go ahead and spend the money at the beginning on good garden soil for your garden. You don't want topsoil, you want garden soil, or potting soil even, or even raised bed soil. But soil is so important, and once you get established, you don't have to do that much each year. Put some compost over top of it, throw maybe a little bit of fertilizer on it to build it back up, top it off, because you will lose soil every year when you pull the roots out, or when you pull, if it's outside when it rains, some of it will run off. So you're going to have, if you use raised beds, you're going to have to top them off almost every year. So soil is a very, very important thing. Another important thing that you should get when you first start gardening is tools. Invest in good quality tools. Cheap tools have a reason for being cheap. They don't last, and you're just throwing your money away. I made that mistake 2 years ago. I saw on Amazon a real good deal on just hand tools, and I thought, oh man, these are great. So I bought them. I think the pruners lasted maybe 1 season and they were gone. And they were cheap for a reason. So buy good quality stainless steel tools if you can. And be realistic. You're not going to produce enough food to keep you in food all year round. You're still going to have to go to the grocery store. I've been gardening for a good 20 years, and I still have to go to the store. Sometimes, some seasons, my cucumbers are doing really well, but I have no peas. Another year, the peas might do well, but the cucumbers might not do any good. So you're going to have to go to the store and buy some of your things, especially if you're not a homesteader and you don't have milk cows or milk goats. You're going to have to go and get your dairy and your cheese and stuff like that. We have to get the fruits and orange juices and stuff, the citrus fruits we have to buy, because we can't raise them here. So be realistic in what you're thinking, about what you think you're going to get out of the garden. The years you get more experience, you're going to get more and more. That's, it's a learning curve. Make sure you use mulch. This is one thing I did not realize. I did not use any mulch for I don't know how long. And it meant I had to do a lot more work. Now in the greenhouse, I don't use mulch. I don't use it because there's very little weeds in the greenhouse. I do use compost, which can be a type of mulch. I use that in the greenhouse. But outside in the bed gardens and the raised beds are outside, I do use mulch, and that helps regulate the temperature of the soil. It helps reduce the amount of watering I have to do. Plus it cuts down on the weeds. Weeds will still come up, but they're going to be so easy to hoe, it's going to be ridiculous. So make sure you use mulch. Now you can use almost any type of mulch you want. You can use wood chips as long as they've not been treated. You can use leaf mode, and you can use compost. You can use straw, but do not use hay. And if you use straw, I like to leave my straw set out for a season before I start putting it in the garden. That way, if the weed seeds that are in the straw have a chance to go ahead and sprout before you ever put it on the garden. And that way you don't have those weeds. You haven't introduced those weeds to your garden. Another thing that I wish I had known was that you're going to be watering a lot, especially at the beginning. So make sure you have your garden set up near a water source. When I put my garden in the back, I had real close water. When I put it out here in the front, it was close to the well, but not the water. So last time we had somebody work on our water system, I asked them to put a spigot out there. So now I have water in my garden. But not only having it close to the water, you should have an automatic or system set up somehow. An irrigation system, soaker hose, something that you can just turn on the water. It'll gently water your beds as you go about doing the other work. And even if it's a soaker hose in each bed, that'll be fine. Just take your hose and move it from one soaker bed, turn one hose on, change it to the next one. And by the time you're done weeding and harvesting, you'll have all your beds watered, and you won't have to stand there in the hot sun trying to get the water into the ground. Because it's always better to deep water the garden beds than just to give them a little water and walk away. Another thing is, remember that you cannot control the weather, the bugs, or diseases. You might go a whole season and everything might be perfect. You might go another season and a hailstorm comes and there goes your corn. Or a windstorm comes and it blows all your broccoli and cauliflower down to the ground. You can't control these things. So you have to learn to go with the flow and be prepared for failures. I guarantee you, you're going to fail at something. It's just the way it is. But each failure is a learning step. You always learn something from your failures. It's kind of like Bob Ross used to say, there's no real accidents in painting. It just means that you have to turn and make a different, what's the word I'm looking for? Make a different decision. If my corn gets wiped out, I'll have to plant something else. I won't have corn that year. I'll have to go to the store and buy something. I have to go with the flow. But we all kill something. Our gardeners always kill something. Whether it's seedlings that you're trying to start, or whether it's plants, and everything's going to die out at the end of the season anyway, almost. There's very few that will go on and on and on. But there are some plants that you can plant that will stay in there forever. The next thing I can say is keep a journal. I have kept the journal for the last 15 years, I think. And it's so wonderful. I can go back and I can say, okay, I planted this a little too early last year. I need to plant it a little bit later this year. Or I can look at it and go, oh, July 1st. Oh, stink bugs are going to be coming. I need to prepare for that. I need to throw the insect covers over the plants, or I need to spray, or I need to, it helps you to know what to expect in the future. So that is my 14 things I wish I had known before I started gardening. So I hope that this helps you. And I've got some other videos that you can go and look at on how to start a garden and how much to plant and all that stuff. So remember, dream big, follow that dream, and like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.